Now, right about now, we'll be discussing the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Nigerian Bar Association having met to discuss ways to entrench the rule of law and safeguard the fundamental rights of Nigerian citizens. The NBA also inaugurated a 5-man committee called the Citizens Liberties Committee, CLC, to safeguard the rights of Nigerians as well. And this committee is to be led by human rights lawyer Deji Adeyanju, with a mandate of conducting monthly inspections on police stations and detention facilities in order to promote transparency within the justice system. And now to our guests, we've been able to reconnect with them. We have Qudus Alalafia, legal practitioner in Abuja, and we also have Zubairu Abubakar, legal practitioner in Kaduna. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us at this time.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to join you this evening.
All right, let me begin with you, Qudus. Now, there have been so many human rights breaches in the past few years, from the arrests and charges against protesters to that of Joe Ajero, PDOM, invasion of Serap, and a lot more. Now, firstly, what would you say are the root causes of these breaches and also the erosion of the rule of law in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. The best way to describe it is an abuse use of power. If our political leaders, if our so-called government holders, those who are in government, let me just put it that way, or those who administer governance on us, if truly they really respect the law of the land, the ground norm, the basis upon which the Constitution lies. Of course, just two things: rule of law, fundamentally, rule of law and the fundamental rights. Those two things are always working in pari materia. They're always working all together. Then the last one is the supremacy of the law. If truly they understand the connotation of these three things that I've mentioned, they would know that for whatever they do, for whatever representation they are making in government, they derive their power from us. And that is why the Constitution, if I'm not mistaken, maybe section 14 or section 13, sub 5 says sovereignty belongs to the people, from which the Constitution derives its authority, from which it derives its own constitutionality. And it is this same Constitution that now goes ahead to establish establish each of the three arms of government. But unfortunately, what we have today is government criminalizing human inalienable rights. So the root cause of it, basically, like I said, is abuse use of power.
Okay.
You are in power, you believe you can do and undo. You believe once you talk, action follows, without looking into what the law actually says.
All right, Qudus. Now, sorry to cut you off, but then, the NLC and the NBA have decided to come together and collaborate. How do you think that they can effectively collaborate in order to promote workers' rights and citizens' liberties in Nigeria?
Yes, it's okay if the NBA and the NLC, they are coming together as a group, as a peer pressure to make sure that things are done appropriately. But let me put it out there that there are mechanisms, ordinarily, there are mechanisms to make sure that human rights are not being impugned upon, you do not deny people of their fundamental rights. There are several mechanisms. Just that what we lack in Nigeria basically is the effectiveness of those mechanisms. And even if the NLC and the the NBA and the NLC, they come together and they could not make use of the available mechanism to be effective, we will still be back to square one. For example, for every fundamental right action by law, it takes precedence, just like election petition cases that you see in our courts. The way the court gives so much prominence to election cases is the same way fundamental right action by the rules of the fundamental right civil procedural rules are meant to be timelessly decided. It is there. But what do we have in our court today? You will find the fundamental right action lingering up to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years.
But before anything now, Qudus, you'd agree with me that the issue of corruption, within the justice system and also independence of the judiciary needs to be tackled first. Speak to us on the challenges that may lie ahead for this particular committee. Do you think that they can handle them?
Well, to be sincere, they are just pressure groups. They lack enforcement. If they want to enforce, they will have to enforce through the government mechanism that I've just mentioned. But okay, let's assume now that as they have come together, then they find out that okay, fine, we've been able to identify human rights abuses in this particular area. Once you identify it, what next do? You make sure you ignite the mechanism available. But I'm now saying that even the mechanism are not effective. So the least, or the most we can all do, whether NLC, whether NBA, is to keep, protesting. I don't want to use the word shouting. Is to keep protesting, is to keep shouting to the world. Perhaps those in government will see it as a sense of responsibility to breathe a life into the various mechanisms. For example, let's say, for instance, like I was saying earlier on, NBA and NLC, they've come together and they've been able to identify some certain aspects of human rights abuses. The next thing for them is to go through the available mechanism to seek justice. I'm saying that even with that, the mechanisms are not efficient. The mechanisms are not effective. So until we plead to our leaders, to our so-called political participators in government, let them allow the rule of law to have its own course. Once you don't shout rule of law, you don't shout supremacy of the law when it suits you, even when it doesn't suit you. If you remember the authority of Ojukwu versus Governor of Lagos State, even the government is not approved the law he has made. It is we are both the same before the law.
But will it help?
But what I'm saying,
will it help, Qudus? Will it help for them to ensure that their collaboration is inclusive and representative of all stakeholders? I'm talking about even the grassroots organizations and also community groups.
Yes, of course, to a very large extent. I would say that because, like I said, they are pressure groups. And ordinarily, when you are forming that kind of association, that kind of organization, you make sure that you draw people from different backgrounds, which culminate into what we call Nigeria today, so that everybody will be duly represented. So the best the committee, for me, the best the committee can achieve is with respect to identification of human rights abuses and making sure that at every fora, they come up with, they just come up, let them come on TV, on radio, on all the social media handles to say, oh, if government is not going to breathe life into the mechanism so that we can get justice for this, then we will not stop talking. So when of course they form pressure group like that, so if they continue to make sure that they keep pressuring government to do the right thing, and I hope the government will listen. But what do we have today, if I may say? We have protesters coming out to say, please, we want to end bad governance. And the following day, we are hearing they are in court for treason. How do you charge somebody that is carrying placards for treason. Treason
Exactly.
is you trying to overthrow the government. How do they relate?
That was actually going to be my next question.
Until the mechanisms are effective, the best the NLC and the NBA can do is to still keep on protesting. That's the best thing.
That was actually where my next question was going to come from, the criminalization of civil protests. A lot of people see it as a threat to democracy and also the rule of law. Now, what do you think are the long-term consequences of this, that's criminalization of civil protests, and how do you think that the CLC will be able to, mitigate them?
Thank you very much. Well, let me start from the first question.
The consequences.
Where we will all arrive at is what we call autocracy or satocracy, whichever one, or what we call military rule. What we have now is more or less like we are having military in native, military in Agbada. So because if you do not allow people to have their civil liberties entails allowing them to express themselves. After all, we have the time of former President Goodluck Jonathan. We have the time of former President Musa Yar'Adua. So if we actually add those times, those periods, nothing has changed. Just that the leaders that we have or that we have been having, they decided to make sure that they tame all voices. So the long run is that what we have is no longer democracy. It is just a military rule covered with maybe some apparel of democracy, which is not. That's number one. Number two, we are going to the next question. The NLC and the NBA, well, they can, being that they are made up of able men and women, yes, they can be the tool through which the people will now talk. You can see, of course, look at ordinary citizens on the streets who are not really powerful. They got them, they sent them to prison, okay, and until when they were granted bail for carrying placards. But look at the NLC president. He was arrested, and the same day, I think about 16 hours after or so, he was released. Yes, he was released because he's able, quote and unquote. So they can be tools upon which the people can now speak to government. But I am also still saying that it is not until when the NLC and the NBA comes together to speak to government on behalf of we Nigerians. Nigerians should be, a common Nigerian should be able to stand on his feet, to speak to his political leader, to speak to the people in government, to say, what you are doing is not right. That is exactly what we call democracy. That is exact. So far the person is not going above board, because I am quick to realize that fundamental rights as well also have its exceptions, also has its limitations. So far nobody has gone beyond board. The people that was arrested, if you uncover arsenal of ammunition or weapon and everything, then it has gone, from the purview of protest to something else. But we are talking about people that were carrying placards. But the situation we have now is, of course, when government blocks a page for people to express themselves, of course there should be another means upon which we can express ourselves.
Okay, now Qudus, just before we go, sorry, time is not on our side. Sorry about that. Time isn't on our side. But just before we go, how you're talking about, still on this, still on your chain of thought. Let's talk about the issue of police brutality and misconduct. We've seen that happen even during the protests and even outside the protests. Especially when it comes to cases where officers are not held accountable. How can we push for these officers to be punished for their deeds and their action?
Thank you very much. I believe the coming together of the NLC and the NBA will be of a greater help here. once an abuse is identified and being perpetrated by an officer, they know what to do. And what do they need to do? They write to the appropriate authorities and they put pressure on, so within the limit of the law, on such authority to do what is necessary. And that is why it is very, very key for government not to gag our voice, so that if you are not doing the right thing, you can come back to the world to say, oh, this has happened, we have written you, investigate this issue and do the right thing. So it is a very good thing at this moment that the NLC and with respect to this question that you just asked, it is a very good thing, particularly with the respective committees the NBA has inaugurated. Let them come up once they are able to identify any. Of course, we have seen cases where the police have brought 1 or 2 or 3 perpetrators of these dastardly acts to justice. Of course, there was a medium upon which that was done. So I still believe if we could still be seeing 1 or 2 of those cases, then it can be better.
Oh, okay.
So if NLC and NBA comes together, let them, once they identify it, write to the appropriate authority, then of course pressure them within the ambit of the law to do the right thing.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Qudus Alalafia, for taking time out to speak to us on this legal practitioner from Abuja. We appreciate you for your time.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.